welcome to my channel. Today, I want to share with you a story about fear, missed chances, and the quiet transformation that happens when we start to speak up. It's about how one simple conversation can change everything. Let's dive right into it. I wasn't planning to go out that night. It had been a long week at the agency, tight deadlines, stubborn clients, and too many coffee-fueled brainstorming sessions that led nowhere. I wanted to stay in, maybe watch a rerun of The Office and pass out before midnight. But Matt, my coworker and the closest thing I had to a wingman, had other plans. "Come on, Jake," he said over the phone, his voice already tinged with the buzz of pre-drinks. "It's Rooftop Friday. You need this." So I caved. The place was packed. A trendy rooftop bar in downtown Manhattan, filled with beautiful people pretending to laugh a little louder than necessary, and clinking glasses like they were auditioning for a champagne commercial. Matt and two other guys from work had snagged a corner booth near the fire heaters. The music pulsed low, and the skyline glittered behind us like a painting. We were halfway through our second round when they walked in. 4 of them, like they stepped out of an editorial shoot, each one stunning in their own way. Not the intimidating, aloof kind of beautiful either. They were laughing, lively, totally owning the room. One of them caught my eye. Tall, curly brown hair, sharp jawline, a smile that looked like it had secrets. Later, I'd learn her name was Natalie. Matt elbowed me. "Dude, models. I'd bet my last paycheck." I chuckled. "You don't even have a paycheck yet." But he was right. Turns out they were models, not just Instagram types, but actual, agency-signed, runway-walking models. And somehow, through some weird twist of social courage, and maybe the 2 whiskeys I'd already downed, I stood up and walked over. "Hey," I said, "you ladies look like you just made the rest of us invisible." That earned a few laughs. I invited them to join our booth, and they accepted. Natalie sat next to me. She had that kind of presence, like when she looked at you. It felt like no one else existed. We talked for hours about weird first dates, obscure indie bands, her obsession with horoscopes, my failed attempt at learning Italian. It didn't feel like flirting. It felt like connection. Around 2 a.m., the girls said they had to leave. I nodded, not really expecting anything more. Honestly, I wasn't even thinking that far. I figured it was one of those rare, golden nights that you remember fondly, but never try to recreate. But then, she pulled out her phone. "Hey," she said, biting her lip slightly. "Can I get your number?" I blinked. "Yeah, of course." She typed it in, sent me a quick "this is me" text, and with a small wave, disappeared down the rooftop stairs with her friends. I watched her go, a little stunned. A girl like her, asking me for my number. Matt clapped me on the back. "You just won tonight." "Bro," I tried to play it cool. "It's probably just polite banter." But the truth was, I was already replaying our conversation in my head. Every laugh, every glance, the way she leaned in when I spoke at around 4 a.m. Back in my apartment, I texted her, "Drink sometime." My treat. No question mark. I wanted it to sound confident, not needy. Then I passed out, still buzzing from the night. The next morning, no reply. Fair enough. Maybe she was still sleeping. So I waited. Around 4 p.m. the next day, I sent another message. "Let me know which evenings you're free. I'll make it happen." And then, silence. Nothing. I stared at the screen for a good 5 minutes after sending that second message. I wasn't sure what I expected. Maybe a, "Hey, sorry, crazy day," or even just a sure, anything but the cold, glowing silence of an unanswered text. It felt hollow. A weird weight settled in my chest, the kind that makes your coffee taste bitter and your room seem colder than it really is. I told myself not to overthink it. She's busy. People have lives. Maybe she didn't see it. Maybe she's just not a texter. Hell, maybe her phone died and she lost her contacts. 1,000 maybes. But I knew better. I'd played the modern dating game long enough to recognize the signs, the slow fade, the polite smile turned distant, the text that never gets returned. Still, it stung. Maybe because Natalie didn't feel like a random spark from a night out. It felt like something. That kind of something that doesn't come around often, not when you've spent most of your 20s swiping right on people you wouldn't talk to in real life. I didn't tell anyone at first. I kept it to myself, as if silence would make it sting less. But a few days later, Matt noticed. "You ever hear back from that model girl?" he asked casually, slurping instant ramen at his desk. I hesitated. "Nah." She ghosted. He blinked. "Wait, what?" "But she asked you for your number." "Yeah." "That's weird. I mean, why ask if you're not going to reply?" I shrugged, trying to play it off. Maybe it was a social thing. Maybe she was being polite. Matt frowned. "Man, I don't get girls." Neither did I. The thing is, I didn't feel entitled to a reply. I wasn't angry, but there was a part of me, small, wet, insecure, that kept whispering, "What did you do wrong?" I went back over the night in my head, every moment. Did I say something stupid? Was I too eager? Too casual? Not cool enough? Not hot enough? Truth is, I've never been the guy, the effortlessly handsome, smooth-talking dude who can charm a room without trying. I'm more of a 6, 5 on a good day, decent smile, average build, a guy you'd forget in a crowd, but maybe remember for his jokes. And Natalie, she wasn't just out of my league. She was playing a different sport. And that's when the self-doubt kicked in hard. I started second-guessing everything. My clothes that night, my posture, the way I laughed, the stupid story I told about trying to cook risotto and almost setting off the fire alarm. Was I trying too hard to be relatable? I even began to question whether the connection I thought we had was real, or if I had just imagined it because I wanted it so badly. But it felt real. I wasn't hallucinating the way her eyes lit up when we talked about our shared love for old Hitchcock films, or how she leaned in, touched my arm lightly when I made a joke. Those weren't accidents, were they? One night, about a week later, I was scrolling through Instagram when Matt sent me a post. It was Natalie, on the beach, some island. Crystal clear water, perfect lighting, sun-kissed skin. Caption, "Reset button, activated." I stared at it, my heart dropping for a reason I couldn't fully explain. She looked radiant, unbothered, like the night we met hadn't even registered on her radar. And I was still here, in my overpriced one-bedroom, analyzing texts that never got replies. I didn't like that feeling. Not because I expected her to feel the same way, but because it made me realize how easy it was to let a few words, or lack thereof, affect how I saw myself. I didn't want to be that guy. So I muted her stories, not blocked, not unfollowed, just muted. Enough to reclaim a bit of peace. Still, something about it nagged at me. Why ask for someone's number if you have no intention of using it? Was it just reflex? A social courtesy? Was I a pawn in some game of attention or validation? Or worse, was I just forgettable? A few weeks passed. Life went on, kind of. Work got hectic again. A new campaign deadline loomed, and I found myself buried in slideshows, taglines, and late-night revisions. But even in the rush, there were moments, walking home at night, sitting with coffee in the morning, where my mind drifted back to her, not in a desperate, lovesick kind of way, more like an itch I couldn't scratch, an open tab in my brain that refused to close. Then one Thursday night, something unexpected happened. I was meeting a friend at this art gallery downtown. He was curating a photography exhibit, black and white portraits of strangers on the subway. It was pretentious in the way only New York art shows can be, but I showed up to support him. The place was buzzing, glasses of cheap white wine in hand, people discussing lighting choices and emotional resonance like it was a second language. And then I saw her, Natalie, standing across the room, in a white blazer and jeans, hair in a loose bun, laughing at something a guy next to her had just said. My heart stuttered. She hadn't seen me yet, and I could have left, slipped out, pretended I never saw her, saved myself from the awkwardness or the pain. But I didn't. I walked over, wine glass in hand, acting more confident than I felt. She turned, and when her eyes landed on me, I saw something flash across her face. Surprise, recognition, and was that guilt? "Jake," she said, smiling. "Wow." "Hey," I replied, keeping it light. "Small city." "Huh?" She laughed nervously. "I didn't know you were into art." "I'm not." "My friend curated this. I'm here to pretend to understand shadow and grain. She chuckled again. Well, you wear it well. There was a beat of silence between us. I took it. You kind of disappeared. Her smile faltered just a little. Yeah, I guess I did. I nodded, waiting. She didn't offer anything else. So I did what I promised myself I wouldn't. I asked, "Why'd you ask for my number if you weren't going to reply?" She looked down at her glass, then back up at me. Honestly, I don't know. That night was weirdly magical. I wasn't expecting to meet someone I actually vibed with. You were funny, easy to talk to, real, and I panicked. Panicked? I echoed. She sighed. It's hard to explain. I've been in this loop. Meet someone. Flirt. Ghost. It's stupid. But I guess I thought if I didn't follow up, it couldn't get complicated. I stared at her, unsure whether to laugh or be insulted. So what? You liked me. So you ignored me? I know it sounds messed up. I just wasn't ready for something that might mean something. There it was. Honesty. Raw and slightly absurd. And maybe relatable. I'd been ghosted before. I'd done the ghosting too. But this was the first time someone laid it out like that. No excuses. No pretending they were busy or had lost their phone. Just fear. I took a sip of wine. Well, that's probably the strangest compliment I've ever gotten. She grinned. I'm good at those. We stood in silence for a moment, the room swirling around us with curated chaos and laughter. And then she asked, "Do you hate me?" I paused. Oh, no. I just wish you'd said something. I spent a few days wondering what I did wrong. Her face softened. You didn't. It was me, and I'm sorry. There was something disarming about the way she said it. Not dramatic, not manipulative, just sincere. I nodded slowly. Okay. Another silence. And then she said, "Can I make it up to you?" Coffee. No disappearing act this time. I raised an eyebrow. You sure you're not going to run again? She smiled. Sheepish. I'll turn off my flight mode. I promise. We met for coffee that Sunday. A quiet little place tucked between a flower shop and a bookstore on the Lower East Side. It had those warm amber lights and mismatched chairs that made you feel like time moved slower inside. She showed up 5 minutes early. I was already there, nursing a cappuccino and trying not to overanalyze my heartbeat. Natalie waved as she walked in, and I couldn't help but smile. She looked relaxed. No runway makeup. No perfectly curated outfit, just jeans, a soft gray hoodie, and the kind of messy bun that said, "I'm trying, but I'm not trying too hard." I almost brought an apology pastry, she said, sliding into the seat across from me. But then I realized I didn't know your donut preferences. Dangerous move, I replied. This could have ended right here. She laughed. Tucking a strand of hair behind her ear, we started slow, talking about work, movies, how her latest shoot involved standing barefoot in freezing water for an hour to get the perfect natural suffering look. I told her about a campaign I pitched that somehow got approved, even though I came up with it half asleep. We joked. We eased in, but eventually, the conversation dipped below the surface. She admitted she had a pattern. Get close to someone, feel something real, and immediately retreat. It's like my brain hits the eject button before anything can crash. Ever wonder why? I asked gently. Natalie stared at her coffee for a moment. Maybe because real connections scare me more than bad ones, at least with the wrong guys. I know what to expect. I nodded. That made sense. Pain you anticipate hurts less than surprises that shake you. And you, she asked. You seem like you've got it together. I snorted. Not even close. She raised an eyebrow. Really? I leaned back, thinking, I think I've spent most of my 20s pretending I'm okay with casual things. But I'm not. I want something that sticks, but I've learned not to expect it. There was a softness in her gaze when I said that, like she was seeing me for the first time. We talked for almost 3 hours. At some point, our empty mugs sat cold. Forgotten. I don't even remember half the things we said, just the rhythm of it. The feeling of being understood without effort. When we finally left, the sun was already setting. The sky was painted in soft oranges and blues, like some painter had spilled warmth all over the skyline. Outside the café, we lingered. Well, she said, stuffing her hands in her coat pockets. This was different. In a good way, I teased. In a real way. she replied. There was a pause, the kind that asks a question without saying anything. I stepped closer, but didn't push it. So, what now? She looked up at me, eyes searching. I don't know, she said honestly. But I'd like to find out. It wasn't dramatic. No sweeping declarations. No movie-perfect kiss in the street. Just a quiet agreement. Maybe a start. And somehow, that meant more. For the next few weeks, we took it slow. Texting more consistently, small check-ins, sharing dumb memes, inside jokes, music links at 1 a.m. It wasn't intense or obsessive. It was steady, soft, like learning to walk barefoot on a floor you used to think was broken glass. We went on a few casual dates. Dinner at a Thai place neither of us had tried. A quiet walk around Central Park as the leaves turned gold. A movie night at her place, where we both fell asleep halfway through the Grand Budapest Hotel. It was easy, and that scared me. Because somewhere between her laughing at my bad impressions and stealing my fries when she said she was not hungry, I started to want more, and I wasn't sure if she did. One night, as we sat on her rooftop watching planes blink across the sky, I asked, "So, are we doing this?" She looked at me, confused. "Doing what?" "This," I gestured between us. "You and me." Natalie grew quiet. Not awkward quiet, thoughtful quiet, like she was choosing her words carefully. "I like you, Jake," she said. "A lot. But I'm still figuring out if I'm ready for all of this." I nodded slowly, heart sinking a little. "Okay. I don't want to hurt you," she added. "You won't?" I lied. Because truth was, she already could. That's the thing about letting someone in. You hand them the blueprint to your heart and pray they don't burn it. After that conversation, things didn't fall apart. But they changed. She grew slightly distant, not cold, just less present. Messages took longer. Plans were a bit vaguer. The rhythm we'd found started skipping like a scratched vinyl. And I started retreating too. Not out of pettiness, but protection. I didn't want to push her, but I also didn't want to pretend I didn't care. I was caught between patience and pride, and neither felt good. Then one evening, I saw her tagged in a story, out with friends. A guy's arm casually slung around her chair. Nothing romantic, but enough to make my chest tighten. I didn't ask. I didn't want to seem insecure. But that night, I couldn't sleep. I kept wondering, was I just a pit stop on her way to someone else? Was I the safe space before she dove into a new thrill? The next morning, I texted, "Hey, can we talk soon? No pressure, just need to clear my head a bit." She replied 10 minutes later, "Of course." Tonight, we met at the same coffee shop from our first official meetup. Same corner table, but everything felt heavier. She looked at me. "Serious? You okay?" I nodded, then shook my head. "I don't want to guess where I stand." Natalie sighed. "I know. I felt you pulling away. I figured I deserved that." "I'm not trying to punish you," I said quietly. I really like you, and I'm scared that I'm the only one trying to make this real." Her eyes glistened, but she blinked the tears away fast. "I don't mean to be unfair. You've been amazing, and I hate that my fear keeps blocking me." I swallowed hard. "Then tell me, should I keep trying, or should I walk away before this breaks me?" She was silent for what felt like an eternity. Then she said, almost in a whisper, "I want to try, but I don't know how to not be afraid." And that was the most honest thing anyone had said to me in a long time. I didn't say anything right away. Her words, "I want to try, but I don't know how to not be afraid." They sat between us like a fragile truth neither of us dared to touch. In that moment, I realized something. I couldn't fix her fear. I couldn't promise that I'd never disappoint her, or that this would be easy. But I also couldn't keep holding back what I felt just because she was still figuring it out. So I reached across the table and gently took her hand. "You don't have to not be afraid," I said. "You just have to want this enough to try anyway." Her eyes met mine. For once, there was no guarded smile, no polished charm. Just her, raw, vulnerable, unsure. She squeezed my hand back. "I do," she said, and that was enough. We didn't suddenly become the perfect couple. There were still awkward texts, moments of doubt, days where one of us didn't know what to say. But something shifted that day. We stopped walking in circles around the idea of each other and started moving forward, even if it was messy. Even if it was slow. We set small goals. One dinner every week. No phones. One honest conversation. No filters. One promise, if either of us felt lost. We'd say something before disappearing. Weeks turned into months. And slowly, fear began to turn into familiarity. Uncertainty into comfort. And love? Not the movie kind. Not the dramatic, all-consuming whirlwind, but the kind that grows in the quiet spaces. Between burnt toast breakfasts and long subway rides home. One night, we were back on her rooftop again. Winter had just begun to melt, and the air smelled like rain and fresh starts. Natalie leaned into my shoulder. "You know," she said, "I almost didn't ask for your number that night." I laughed. "Yeah, you kind of ghosted me right after. So I figured." She nudged me. I almost didn't ask. I was going to leave. "Something about you scared me." I turned to her. "Me? Scary?" She nodded. "You felt real, like you might actually matter." I didn't know what to say to that, so I just kissed the top of her head. Sometimes it's not about falling fast or falling hard. Sometimes it's about standing still long enough for someone to find you, and choosing to stay even when it's easier to run. Natalie was never looking for perfect. Neither was I. But we found each other anyway. And this time, we didn't let go. Thanks for tuning in to Reddit Stories. New tales drop daily drama, love, or ghostly glories. Hit like, subscribe, and ring that bell so you won't miss the next story we tell. Got thoughts to share? Drop them below. We read them all, just so you know.